Hey everyone, Data here, and welcome back to another career simulation here on NHL 22. Today, going through the career of the 6th overall pick in the 2022 NHL Draft, David Jiříček. Jiricek was drafted by the Columbus Blue Jackets 6th overall with the draft pick that came from Chicago in the Seth Jones trade. So the rich keep getting richer. It was a great selection for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He is a textbook two-way D, great top four, even top pair potential. Even similar to Simon Nemec, many saw him being the top defenseman of his class, but a knee injury that kept him out for 3 months likely had him slide a little bit. He has also been a great force in the Czech League, where he won the 2021 Rookie of the Year title despite playing only 29 games, scoring 5 goals and 11 assists. He's appeared for the national team at various levels. I believe that it was a great match for both him and for the Blue Jackets organization. So today we'll be going through his career that begins on Columbus, but the question is, will he stay with the Blue Jackets, become a pillar on the blue line, kind of fizzle out, grow, become elite somewhere else? Who knows? That is for us to watch and enjoy. Here on NHL 22, David Jiříček starts as a 72 overall, but honestly, through all my simulations, I see that Jiricek never really grows. For a guy who has such high potential and was drafted so high, I thought it would make sense to boost him a little bit, so I went with the recommendations made in Superhighway Gaming's update of David Jiříček. I bumped him up to a 75 overall, still kept his potential as medium elite, so I don't think that is an unfair boost for him at all. 17 years of age, 6'3", 176, because this is September of 2021, but when he gets drafted, he'll likely maybe even be a bit taller, a bit heavier, and so forth. He's going to be starting out with 3-star defense, 84 stick checking, 82 shot blocking, 82 defensive awareness. He's a decent skater. That will come over time. His shot power is pretty good at 84 and 85 respectively for wrist and slap shot. Puck skills, other stuff, nothing too crazy at the moment, but he's a well-rounded two-way D who will develop nicely. We're taking control of a totally different team, just simulating. Everything is automated, everything's set by the AI general managers, all the trades, signings, line combinations, and so forth. The injuries are also turned on, and Jiricek's durability isn't necessarily super high. He had that knee injury, so will he be able to stay healthy throughout his career? That'll be another thing that we keep an eye on. And if you're interested in seeing simulations of some of the other high-name prospects in the 2022 draft class, be sure to check out the playlist or check out the cards that come up throughout this episode. We love doing career simulations here. They take a lot of time. It's not easy to simulate through all of this, so if you enjoy it, be sure to leave a like and drop a comment with your thoughts about it. And also do consider subscribing, so you'll have franchise mode, career simulations uploads, as we're finishing off NHL 22 and about to get into NHL 23, where we'll do much of the same. So we'd love to have you along for the ride, but for the moment, let's begin Jiricek's career, and it all starts at the 2022 draft. And with the 6th overall selection in the 2022 draft, the Columbus Blue Jackets go ahead and select David Jiříček with that selection. He is still 6'3", put on a little bit of weight, now 186, 18 years of age. His attributes haven't changed. Now the question will be, does he get signed right away and placed in the AHL system? Does he have some good preseason performances and push for an early NHL appearance? Time will tell. But of course, the rest of the league is a bit wonky. Cooley did go to Arizona, but the rest of the league has players going elsewhere. Try not to look at that too much. Generated prospects will come up, etc. We are just focused on the career of David Jiříček and where he goes, not necessarily what happens in the rest of the league, because that's always impossible to keep exactly realistic. But with all that being said, let's head into year number 1 of David Jiříček's career. In year number 1, David Jiříček finds himself on the top defensive pair with the Cleveland Monsters, the Columbus Blue Jackets AHL affiliate. By the way, I forgot to go over his X factors when drafted. He has tape-to-tape zone ability, as well as send it, in reverse, and off the rush, so very exciting to see that. He is still a 75 overall with medium elite potential. He is listed as a minor top 4 defenseman. He's playing on a top pair with Danny DeKeyser, also getting some special teams time and stuff like that, so he'll have lots of ice time. In the preseason with Columbus, played in 3 games, had 1 assist, not enough to crack the NHL lineup just yet, understandably, so let's see how he does in his first year in North America, playing top pair in Cleveland. In year number 1, the Cleveland Monsters finished 14th place in the AHL with a very respectable record of 42, 29, and 11. Now, David Jiříček, we were talking about this earlier, he had some injury troubles as he only played in 59 out of 82 games this year with Cleveland, still scored 5 goals and 23 assists for 28 points. He was a +9, had 14 penalty minutes, but unfortunately missed out on 23 games due to some sort of injury. If he had played in a full 82-game season, he would have been on pace for 39 points. In the postseason, the Cleveland Monsters went on a run as they went all the way to the Calder Cup final, but fell in 6 games to the Grand Rapids Griffins, the Detroit Red Wings AHL affiliate. They beat the Rocket, Marlies, and Bears on their run to the final. In the postseason, it looks like David Jiříček was pretty much at full health as he played in 19 out of those 20 games, and he scored 3 goals and 8 assists for 11 points in those 19 games. A great pace, -2, 11 penalty minutes, and he was averaging over 23 minutes of ice time per night. Forgot to show you what he was doing in the regular season. I'll get that. Actually, it was 22:40, so just a little bit higher. So a lot of ice time for Jiricek in his first season in North America. He is now up to a 77 overall and listed as a minor top 2 defenseman. His defensive attributes have not changed. Neither have his I don't think his puck skills, not much has changed. His shots are now harder and his offensive awareness has grown, but I don't think much else has changed, if anything. But regardless, he is now a 77 overall, headed into year number 2, which will likely be another year in the AHL, but who knows if he can crack the Blue Jackets lineup. We'll see what kind of growth he gets over the 2023 offseason. In year number 2, David Jiříček is still in the top pair here in Cleveland, but he's now a 79 overall, playing with Michael Del Zotto. Great to see that he's growing, and now listed as a depth defenseman. He could probably squeeze into the NHL, but not bad, giving him another year of development, which is probably a pretty realistic trajectory for Jiříček, who's now 19 years of age. In the preseason, he got 6 games this time and scored a goal and 2 assists for 3 points, so he's just itching to get into the NHL, but still a 79 overall. Everything seems to have grown. I'm not sure if the physical did too much, neither did the skating very much, but defensive awareness up to 85, his puck skills mostly 82 to 85 right there. And after a solid rookie AHL season that was cut short due to injury, we'll want to see what Jiricek can do in a hopefully fully healthy season that could perhaps bring Cleveland all the way to a Calder Cup championship. In year number 2, the Cleveland Monsters had an even better finish, as this time around they finished 6th in the AHL with 101 points and a record of 48, 29, and 5. David Jiříček once again missed time this season, as he only played in 65 out of 82 games. Less missed time than last season, but still missed time nonetheless. 6 goals and 28 assists for 34 points, which would have put him on an 82-game pace of a 43-point season. So an improvement on last season, absolutely. +19, 58 penalty minutes, 7 power play points, 3 of his goals were game winners, and he was averaging almost 24.5 minutes of ice time per night. Despite Jiricek's second season being a better year for Cleveland in the regular season, the Monsters dropped in round number 1 in 4 games to the Toronto Marlies, who would go on to win the Calder Cup in 7 games, once again facing the Grand Rapids Griffins. They made the finals again. So hey, Toronto won something. Shout out to Toronto. All in good fun in those 4 postseason games. You know what? No shame in losing to the eventual champions, but unfortunate that it was an early exit. David Jiříček recorded 1 assist. He was a -1, had a minor penalty, and was on the ice for an average of almost 28 minutes of ice time per night. There are definitely some overtimes in there, but he was a workhorse in the postseason. David Jiříček maintains his 79 overall status, and by the way, in 2023-24, he made his NHL debut with Columbus, appeared in 3 games, recorded his first NHL goal on just 4 shots. He averaged 13-14 per night through those 3 games with the Blue Jackets, and although it doesn't count as his rookie season, it's nice to see that he made his NHL debut in 2023-24. Headed into the 2024 offseason, he's still 79 overall, but he is in line for a solid amount of growth, I would think, with all the ice time that he registered in both the NHL and the AHL. So let's hope for a big offseason. Eat your vitamins, train hard with Gary Roberts, and we'll see where Jiricek is for 2024-25. Year number 3, and David Jiříček has arrived in the NHL. 20 years of age in the year 2024-25. I think this is a realistic trajectory for Jiricek. He's playing second pair with Jake Bean here in Columbus. The top pair, Werenski and Boqvist. The great trade with the Blackhawks keeps getting better. If you're curious about the Blue Jackets lines here to begin year number 3 or the first year in the NHL, JT Miller on the team here. In this universe, he hasn't signed his extension with the Canucks. Sillinger, Line, Voracek, Jenner, Burakovsky makes out the top 6. Texier, Johnson, and Hartman the third line. Obi-Kubel, Corrali, and Thomas Tatar on the fourth line. Defense, we already saw that. Kukan and Niku on the third pair. And goaltending is Elvis Merzlikins, backed up by Matt Murray. Scratches, Oliver Bjorkstrand's a healthy scratch. He hasn't been traded in this universe, but that will change over the course of the season. David Jiříček, by the way, when it comes to special teams, he does have second unit power play and second unit penalty kill. So he will be used. They saw him in the AHL. He was a workhorse. He grows very well over the offseason. 83 overall, listed as a top 4 defenseman, still with that medium league potential. 4-star puck skills, defense, skating, and shooting with the 3-star senses and physical. I am very excited to see what Jiricek can do here with Columbus in his rookie season, year number 3. In year number 3, David Jiříček had a great rookie season experience as the Columbus Blue Jackets won the Metropolitan Division and finished 5th best in the NHL. 104 points and a record of 47, 25, and 10. David Jiříček played in 71 out of 82 games, not bad at all, but still hasn't gotten a full healthy season in. 4 goals and 12 assists for 16 points through those games. He was a plus 14, had 46 penalty minutes, and was averaging over 21.5 minutes of ice time per night. In the postseason, however, the Blue Jackets dropped in 5 games in round number 1 to the Islanders, who went on to lose to the Hurricanes, who would lose in the Stanley Cup Final in 7 games to the Nashville Predators. Jiricek played in 3 of the 5 games and registered 1 assist. He was a -2 and was logging over just about 26.5 minutes of ice time per night. So although the offense doesn't seem to be there just yet, he's already turning into a bit of a workhorse out there. And after this rookie season, David Jiricek grows to an 84 overall. He's still 6'3", but now weighs 193 pounds, 89 defensive awareness. His puck skills all between 86 and 89. His physical hasn't really changed too much. Still only 3 stars for a guy who's 6'3", but a solid rookie season from Jiricek. And after the Blue Jackets won the Metropolitan Division, we'll hope to see more headed into his sophomore season. Year number 4, David Jiříček's sophomore season in the NHL, and he is now an 86 overall at the age of 21. Love to see that. Listed as a top 4 defenseman, and the top 4 in Columbus is probably the best in the NHL right now. He is also, by the way, on the last year of his ELC, as he burned 1 year of that in the AHL. So this is now the 3rd year of his entry-level contract. He'll need a bridge or a long-term extension after this season. Playing with Jake Bean as always. His attributes have grown very nicely over the offseason. 4.5-star puck skills and shooting, 4-star defense, 90 defensive awareness. If you're curious about the rest of the lineup, Cam Atkinson is back in Columbus. Boone Jenner is looking good as an 86, and the rest of the lineup that you could look at if you'd like. But of course, we're always just focusing on the defense here. David Jiříček looking for a fully healthy season as an 86 overall. Let's hit it. Year number 4 was another marvelous season for the Columbus Blue Jackets as they once again won the Metropolitan Division, but this time did it by finishing 2nd best in the NHL, just 1 win off the President's Trophy winning Tampa Bay Lightning with a glittering record of 54, 23, and 5. In his sophomore season, David Jiříček once again lost a little bit of time to injury, but still played in 70 out of 82 games. This year, he scored 5 goals and 10 assists for 15 points, had a plus 19, and was averaging only about 20.5 minutes of ice time per night. So took a step back a little bit in that regard. I guess he wasn't getting as much special teams time. But the team itself had great success in the postseason, going all the way to the Stanley Cup Final before losing in a 7th game heartbreak. They took down the Devils in round 1, Hurricanes in round 2, Senators in round 3, got progressively easier, 6, 5, and 4 games respectively. They swept through the Eastern Conference Final, but then fell in 7 to the Flames. Huge heartbreak for a very good Blue Jackets team. The Blue Jackets had great performances from JT Miller, Patrick Laine, Alex Texier, all those guys down the list right there. David Jiricek played in all 22 games. He was fully healthy in the postseason. He scored 1 goal and 6 assists for 7 points through those games. He was a +7, and in the postseason was averaging more ice time at just over 23 minutes of ice time per night. Now at the age of 22 and done with his entry-level contract through 4 years, David Jiříček is now down to an 85 overall. But it shouldn't matter too much. He should continue to grow over the off-season headed into year number 5. Through 4 seasons, he's seen a Calder Cup final, a Stanley Cup final, 2 division titles with the Blue Jackets. He's seen a lot for a 22-year-old headed into his 3rd NHL season. We'll see what kind of contract he gets on with the Blue Jackets, whether it'll be short-term or long-term, and get ready for 2026-27. To begin year number 5, the Blue Jackets are in heavy financial trouble. They only have $0.025 million of cap space, $25,000. David Jiříček is a pending RFA, 87 overall at 22 years of age, who would likely be getting $7-8+ million, and they just don't have it right now. So it looks like he's headed back to the Czech League, and he'll just take the year off at this point, unless they trade Jiricek's right to another team, or if they can move out money to sign a contract, but he may not be playing in 2026-27. The Blue Jackets are a strong team, and they don't have the money, it seems. But as of right now, and I'll keep an eye on it, the Blue Jackets will play 2026-27 without David Jiříček. So in the end, David Jiříček did not play in 2026-27, but the Blue Jackets did not put him on the trade block. Usually RFAs are put on the block. He was not put on the block. He was just left as an RFA. We don't know where he went. In the A-line, it just says that he didn't play for this season, but in our storyline, I would imagine that he went back and played a season in Europe. But without David Jiříček, the Blue Jackets finished 12th in the NHL with a record of 43, 32, and 7. If you're curious, Blue Jackets scoring looked like this. And in the postseason, the Columbus Blue Jackets won the 2027 Stanley Cup without David Jiříček. What a run to the Cup, as they won the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round, every single round in 7 games. I'm sure that's an NHL record right there. They played a maximum of 28 games. It was a long postseason, and they took down the Jets without David Jiříček to win the Stanley Cup. Does that make him feel sour? Does that fracture relations even further? Does he go to unrestricted free agency? Does he sign a contract now in 2027-28? That will be the question headed into year number 6, as the core, Laine, Miller, Werenski, Boqvist, all have their Stanley Cup ring, but David Jiříček does not. In year number 6, David Jiříček says, all right, I'll sign back up with the Blue Jackets. They're offering me money. They want to give me first pair D. All right, hopefully the relationship isn't fractured too far, but Jiricek is now up to an 88 overall and signs a pretty cheap 3-year contract. It's a bridge that will bring him to unrestricted free agency and only pays him $6.435 per season, a total of just over $19.3 million. Werenski's making $9.5, Jake Bean's making $4.8 for 1 more year. Oh my goodness, so Boqvist, Bean, and Werenski all on expiring deals. The top 4D may look very different next season, but Jiricek is 23 years of age, listed as a top 4D at an 88 overall, 5-star puck skills with the 4.5 shooting and defense, playing top pair D with Werenski on the reigning Stanley Cup champion squad. Offense skill, still got Miller, Sillinger, Laine, they're still all out here. The clock is now ticking on Columbus management and David Jiříček. They got to really mend that relationship and make him want to stay in Columbus after these 3 seasons are up, especially with these expiring contracts around him. So let's see how 2027-28 goes. In year number 5, the Columbus Blue Jackets are still rolling atop the NHL with a 5th place finish and another Metropolitan Division title. That is now 3 division titles in the last 4 years for the Blue Jackets, and 1 for every season that David Jiříček has been in the lineup. The Blue Jackets had a record of 51, 26, and 5. David Jiříček once again could not stay healthy for a full season. This year he played in 67 out of 82 games. New career high in goals with 6, and tying his career high of points with 16, 6 goals, 10 assists. He was a negative 15 on the year, a bit odd for him, and he was also averaging about 25.5 minutes of ice time per night. So he was a workhorse on that top pair, but still not quite getting the offensive numbers that you would hope. And in the postseason for the third consecutive year, the Columbus Blue Jackets make the Stanley Cup final. This is bonkers. But this year they get swept out by the Avalanche. They took down the Penguins, Islanders, and Leafs all in 6 games each to make the final, but lose for the second time in 3 years and cannot go back-to-back. In the postseason, David Jiříček was fully healthy as he played in all 22 games, scoring 2 goals and 6 assists for 8 points. He was -2 and was logging almost 26 minutes of ice time per night. Another Stanley Cup final loss for Jiricek. He wanted that ring, but couldn't get it this season. 24 years of age, still an 88 overall with 2 more years left on his contract. Attributes are looking great. I really want to see some more success from David Jiříček, especially before the Blue Jackets start to go on the downturn, because after 3 consecutive Stanley Cup final appearances, there comes a point where you can't expect to always make the final. Year number 7, and the defensive core in Columbus is slowly changing as Adam Boqvist has left the team. Zach Werenski was re-signed to a 7-year contract. Jake Bean re-signed to a 4-year contract, so that's great. But Jiricek has 2 years left on his deal, 88 overall. His puck skills all between 89 and 92. The 5-star attributes right there. 4.5 defense and shooting and everything else that hasn't changed too much over the offseason. I'm just hoping that he can take advantage of those offensive attributes. Shout out to the 69 overall on the 3rd pair. That's not great. Offense, you got Patrick Laine signed up for a long time as well. He just won the Rocket Richard with 55 goals last year. Goaltending is Tarasov and Nedeljkovic, so that's been a good duo for the last few years as well. All signs would point to another successful season for the Blue Jackets, but does the run of Stanley Cup final appearances have to end eventually? We'll see in 2028-29. In year number 7, the Columbus Blue Jackets miss out on the postseason, finishing 20th place in the NHL. 41 wins, same as the Philadelphia Flyers up here, but they had 2 less losses and 2 more overtime or shootout losses, which gave them the extra 2 points. This was the first time that Jiricek did not make the playoffs for his entire North American career, NHL and AHL. And this season, the Blue Jackets go 41, 35, and 6. Oh my goodness, David Jiříček had a crazy offensive season. Career highs in everything. 82 games played, a full healthy season. He racks up 16 goals and 44 assists for 60 points. His last 3 seasons combined wasn't even 60 points, I don't think. That's crazy. He was a plus 22, 67 penalty minutes, 12 power play points, even shorthanded points, and logging just over 27 minutes of ice time per night. A 60-point season from him, 64 points from Zach Werenski. Wow, too bad that they missed out on the playoffs. But all that being said, David Jiříček grows to a 90 overall after that career year, and getting it on a discount as well. He's moving into a contract year. Columbus would have loved that season, but they got to milk out some playoff appearances on that contract before he's going to be asking for way too much. 5-star puck skills and defense with 4.5 senses and shooting, 4-star skating, 3.5 physical. I'm just at a loss for words. What a season from David Jiříček. His 27.01 of ice time per night was 1 second more than Cale Makar to give him the lead league in that regard. And although he didn't lead the league in defensive scoring, Cale Makar had 94 points in 82 games, still a very respectable season when compared to his peers. At 25 years of age and 90 overall, now listed as a top 2D, I am very excited to see what year number 8 will bring, headed into 2029-30. Year number 8, David Jiricek's 5th NHL season. He is at a 90 overall, playing top pair D with Zach Werenski, 25 years of age, and he is listed as a top 2 defenseman. Still with the same attributes as we left off after his crazy season last year. Hopefully we can see more of that offensive prowess, eating more of those minutes, and the team can follow suit and make the postseason. And also for good things in 2029-30, which will be a huge contract year for Jiricek. In year number 8, the Columbus Blue Jackets once again just miss out on the postseason. This year even closer by 1 point as they finish in 18th place behind the 17th place Panthers with a record of 39, 34, and 9. Changed one of those overtime losses into a win, and it could have been a different story. Jiricek cooled down offensively in a very big way. 16 goals and 44 assists last year. This year, 0 goals and 23 assists. The first time in his career he doesn't score any goals. He played in 67 out of 82 games, another season that was cut short due to whatever various injuries. 23-point season, -1 with a couple power play points, all while logging 10 seconds shy of 25 minutes of ice time per night. A very different story from last year. With that season under his belt, David Jiříček maintains his 90 overall status, headed into free agency, where he will be due for a very big payday. I would honestly be surprised if he stays in Columbus. He didn't get a Stanley Cup with them, back-to-back seasons of missing the postseason. I don't know what happened this year, but he's shown that he has the offensive abilities. I don't think Columbus has the money to sign him, nor would I necessarily be sold on Jiricek wanting to stay in Columbus long-term. But we'll see what happens in the 2030 off-season, headed on to a potentially very different path in year number 9. In year number 9, after 8 years with the Columbus Blue Jackets and only 5 years playing in the NHL, David Jiříček goes to unrestricted free agency and signs a 5-year contract with the Philadelphia Flyers, staying in the Metropolitan Division no less. The contract will be paying him $9.21 million per season, so he'll get just over $46 million for the next 5 years. The Blue Jackets, I feel like they could match this deal. It's not a crazy contract for a guy who's 26, elite, high 89-90 overall range, but he goes to free agency. Maybe he didn't want to sign, and the Flyers snatch him up to headline their blue line, which everyone else is between 79 and 80. Not the greatest blue line here in Philadelphia. Offensively, there's Brady Tkachuk, Cody Glass, this guy Vladimir Grebeshkov, sniper, draft pick, Bobby Brain, Kotkaniemi, Schmaltz. Not a bad team. And between the pipes, we got Carter Hart. 89 overall with the 5-star defense, puck skills, and shooting. Let's see if he can have an offensive season like he did a couple of years ago, or if he'll be too busy being the workhorse of Philadelphia's blue line. In year number 9, David Jiříček's first with the Flyers, Philadelphia wins the Metropolitan Division, another division title for David Jiříček, and they beat out the Blue Jackets by 2 points. How about that for a rivalry? A record of 47, 31, and 4, good enough for 6th best in the NHL. In the regular season, David Jiříček was back to his offensive ways. In 79 games played, he scored 10 goals and 48 assists for 58 points, a new career high in assists. He was a +23, had 9 power play points, and was logging 25.5 minutes of ice time per night. In the postseason, the Flyers had a great run to the Eastern Conference Final, but fell in 6 games to the eventual Stanley Cup champion Ottawa Senators. In those 18 games, David Jiříček had a goal and 10 assists for 11 points. Pretty solid numbers. He was a +7 and was logging almost 26 minutes of ice time per night. After that solid first year in Philadelphia, Jiricek grows back to a 90 overall, now exact elite potential at the age of 27. 5-star puck skills, defense, skating, and shooting. Great development from Jiricek this season, but let's see if he can keep it up into 2031-32, as the Flyers will want to push a bit further and maybe see a Stanley Cup final. Year number 10, and David Jiříček is starting the season as a 90 overall with a better defensive partner this year in Oliver Shillington, who's an 82 overall. Offensive defenseman, so maybe that'll do something for his offensive numbers. Jiříček is coming off of a 58-point season and a career high in assists, as well as an Eastern Conference Final exit, so we'll see what he and the Flyers can do. Still with the 5-star puck skills, defense, skating, and shooting. Physical 3.5, senses at 4.5, the 89 offensive awareness and poise. The Flyers are a pretty strong team. I wouldn't say they've changed much from last season, so let's hope for more of the same and cross our fingers for another Metropolitan Division title. In year number 10, it was a 10th place finish for Jiricek and the Flyers, as they had a record of 47, 32, and 3. Once again, just slightly above the Columbus Blue Jackets. David Jiricek is really finding his groove now, as he played in all 82 games and set another new career high in assists and now in points, as he scored 15 goals and 49 assists for a 64-point season, the first time he puts up good offensive numbers in back-to-back years. He was a +32, had 87 penalty minutes, 7 power play points, and was logging over 26.5 minutes of ice time per night. A real workhorse who brought in his offensive capabilities. In the postseason, however, the Flyers and Blue Jackets met in round number 1, and the Blue Jackets got the better of Jiricek and the Flyers in a 7-game thriller. The Blue Jackets go on to lose the next round, but just to say, the Flyers lost in round number 1 to Columbus. Through those 7 games, Jiricek scored 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points and was averaging 27 minutes of ice time per night. After another great season, he still remains at a 90 overall, with those 5-star attributes getting even better. 94 passing, 92 defensive awareness, a great year from him. Although I did notice that while I think his shot power goes up, his poise drops to 87. Pretty negligible at the end of the day, but another great season from Jiricek, and let's hope that the streak continues headed into year number 11. Year number 11 in Philadelphia, and David Jiříček, of course, is still on that first defensive pair. His new partner is now Desmond Redden, not quite the same as Shillington, a defensive defenseman, so we'll see how that affects his point production. Shillington had 48 points last season, so we'll see what happens, but Jiříček is a 90 overall start this season, and the Flyers will hope for a deeper run this season after that early first-round exit last year, despite the very good season. David Jiříček coming off of career highs, only the second 82-game season of his career, so fingers crossed that he can stay healthy and keep putting up the numbers. Year number 11 is another postseason berth for David Jiříček as the Flyers finish 13th place in the NHL with a record of 41, 32, and 9. Bit of an odd season from Jiricek as it's a bit of uncharted territory. He's either been in like the 20 points or like the 50-60 points, but he plays a full 82-game season for just the 3rd time in his career and the first ever time he does it in back-to-back seasons. Scores 12 goals, close to a career high, but only 31 assists for a 43-point season. Still respectable, but not at his very best that we've seen. He was a plus 24 at 7 power play points and was logging over 26 minutes of ice time per night. In the postseason, the Flyers took down the Hurricanes in 7 games in round number 1, but ended up getting swept in round number 2 by the Islanders, who would go on to lose to the Leafs, who won the 2033 Cup. A second-round exit isn't horrible, and David Jiříček scored 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points through those 11 games, all while averaging over 27.25 minutes per night, 27-18 a game. He drops back down to an 89 overall, but still very good seasons. That's now 3 years in a row of 40, 50, 60 points. Great stuff from him, getting in the consistent numbers. Most of his attributes have dropped slightly, which is why he's down to an 89 overall. But it was a good season that saw another decent postseason run, so let's keep hoping for more from the Flyers and Jiříček headed into year number 12. Okay, year number 12, and check this out. David Jiříček starting the year on the top pair as always. He'll be an 89 overall to kick the year off, but his new defensive partner is 90 overall, Kimmo Koskiranta, a 5'8" offensive defenseman, 90 overall. He puts up crazy numbers, coming off of an 81-point season in 82 games with the Islanders, division rival who signed a 7-year contract, paying him $17.705 million per season. A crazy deal that may handcuff the Flyers long term, but it doesn't matter right now because it could be an explosive partnership between Koskiranta and Jiricek. I am very excited to see what they can do together. Jiricek still the 5-star puck skills, defense, shooting. It should be an explosive season in Philadelphia led by this top defensive pair, and maybe, just maybe, Jiricek can get closer to that Stanley Cup. It was another top 10 finish for Jiricek and the Flyers in year number 12, as Philadelphia finished 7th best in the NHL with a record of 46, 29, and 7. It was a bit of an odd season from David Jiricek, as he scored 8 goals and 22 assists for 30 points through 82 games. You can see at the top there, Koskiranta scored 71 points in all 82 games. So Jiricek did well, over 100 hits, over 100 blocks, a career low in giveaways. It was a good defensive season, but not the offensive numbers that we thought. But hey, as long as the team is succeeding, that's all right. He was a plus 18, had 9 power play points, and was averaging close to 26 minutes of ice time per night. In the postseason, the Flyers fell in round number 1 with the New Jersey Devils in 6 games, who went on to lose to the Penguins, who lost to the Senators, who lost to the Blackhawks for the Stanley Cup. So the Flyers ended up being the ultimate losers of the 2034 postseason. Through those 6 games, the top D pair had some tough times, as Jiricek had a goal and assist for 2 points, but was a -6, all while logging just about 25.25 minutes of ice time per night. After this season, Jiricek is now 30 years of age and at an 89 overall. Attributes are still looking great. It was one of his better defensive seasons of his career. Not the offensive numbers that we've seen, but like I said, it's not a big deal as long as the team is succeeding. And headed into what may be his final year in Philadelphia, we'll see what year number 13 has in store. Year number 13 and what may be Jiricek's final in Philadelphia. He's still in the top pair with Koskiranta, who after a 71-point season drops from a 90 to an 88, but we won't mention that, I suppose. Eli Harris joins the defensive core, a 20-year-old, 85 overall, medium elite two-way D, who was the 22nd overall pick, 99 shot blocking, 98 stick checking, so that's going to be great for the overall defense here in Philadelphia. Jiricek at 30 years of age is an 89 overall, still with the great puck skills and offensive ability, and coming off of a very strong defensive season. Can he keep all of that up, recapture a little bit of that offensive magic, and try to make something happen in this 5th season with the Flyers? In year number 13, David Jiříček is part of his first ever President's Trophy winning team as the Flyers finish atop the NHL with 113 points. 55, 24, and 3 was their record. David Jiříček, after playing 3 consecutive 82-game seasons, this year missed 20 games due to injury. In 62 games, he scored 10 goals and 27 assists for 37 points, which would have put him on pace for a very nice 49-point season. He was a plus 18, had 3 power play points, and was logging over 26 minutes of ice time per night. In the postseason, it was the President's Trophy curse as the Flyers dropped in round number 1 to the Senators. The Senators would go on to lose in the Eastern Conference Final with the Devils, and they dropped to the Canucks, who won the 2035 Cup. In the postseason, David Jiříček had 1 goal and 3 assists for 4 points through those 7 games. He was angry. He had 16 penalty minutes and was averaging 26.07 of ice time per night. After 5 seasons in Philadelphia, he has a lot of good numbers to show for it. Lots of blocked shots, lots of hits, lots of takeaways, a ton of ice time, 5 consecutive playoff berths, 3 first-round exits, but great numbers for his career. At 31 years of age, he is back up to a 90 overall and will be entering the unrestricted free agency pool, looking for a lot of money. I'm not sure if the Flyers have it, but I really hope they do because he's been a great match here in Philadelphia. But we'll see what can get hammered out in the 2035 offseason. In year number 14, the Flyers just don't have the money, and David Jiříček takes his talents to the Western Conference and signs a 3-year deal with the Winnipeg Jets, paying him an AAV of $15.65 million per season, essentially getting about $1 million more than his last contract in 2 less years. So less term, but a ton of money as he's signed here in Winnipeg for 3 more years. It's a great team here on the Jets. His defensive partner is Maverick Lamoureux, 6'7", 31 years of age, 82 overall. The defensive core as a whole is pretty solid, between 78 and 83 aside from Jiricek. And the forwards in Winnipeg are also quite solid. A very nice top 6 and a goaltender who's an 89 overall. So I'm excited for this season here in Winnipeg, and hopefully Jiricek's postseason streak will continue. At 31 years of age, he is starting the year as a 90 overall with that 94 passing, 92 defensive awareness. Let's see how his first season in Winnipeg will treat him. In year number 14, the mighty Jets are grounded as they finish 26th in the NHL, a very surprising result, as they go 38, 41, and 3 to break up David Jiricek's 5 consecutive postseason berths, and it was just the 2nd time in his 14 years in North America that he didn't make the postseason. Jiricek only missed a couple games this season as he scored 12 goals and 27 assists for 39 points through 80 games. He was a -5 at 8 power play points and was averaging about 26.5 minutes of ice time per night. His defensive numbers now in Winnipeg are just as good as ever, it seems like. 133 hits, 110 blocked shots. Not a lot of giveaways to takeaways, though. Very small ratio. He had 8 fights. How about that? David Jiříček getting in 8 fights. It's not something you can track over the career, but you can see it in every season. I've not been seeing numbers like that. So he was angry this year in Winnipeg. At the age of 32, he's back down to an 89 overall now. Still very good attributes, but the puck skills drop a little bit after that season. Headed into year number 2 in Winnipeg, we'll hope for a much better team result. Year number 15, David Jiricek's 12th season in the NHL, and he's still top pair here in Winnipeg with Maverick Lamoureux on his left. The defensive core has grown over the offseason, so nice to see that. The offense is still pretty solid on paper. I don't know, there's a 74 over here. The 4th line is tough. I don't know. I'm not totally sold on this lineup, but I was more sold on it last year, and it did not do well at all. So it's pretty much anyone's guess how this team will simulate. He's an 89 overall to kick off this season with all his attributes looking as good as always when he's an 89 overall. Will he get back up to a 90? Will he have more offensive numbers? As he hasn't cracked 40, 50, 60 points in a few years now. So we'll see what 2036-37 has in store. Okay, year number 15, and the Winnipeg Jets do what they should have done last year as they finished 7th best in the NHL with 104 points, 48, 26, and 8 was their record as Jiricek returns to the postseason. David Jiříček played his fourth full 82-game season of the last 6 years. Great to see that. 9 goals, 40 assists, and a 49-point season from him. Very, very good, as that's his highest point total since year number 10 when he scored 64 points. He was a plus 39, 46 penalty minutes, 3 power play points, and was logging about 25.5 minutes of ice time per night. In the postseason, the Winnipeg Jets got reverse swept by the Arizona Coyotes. They were up 3-0 and lost 4 in a row to drop round number 1 in 7. The Coyotes lost the next round to the Wild, who went on to win the Stanley Cup, but a tough way for the Jets to go out. Through those 7 games, Jiricek scored 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points and was averaging, oh my goodness, over 28.5 minutes of ice time per night. He was a horse as always here in Winnipeg. At 33 years of age, he's still an 89 overall after a very impressive season and easily the best of the 2 that he's had so far with the Jets. He has 1 more left on his contract. Will he spend more time in Winnipeg afterwards? We'll see what happens, but we'll have to have some more success from the Jets for him to consider that. Year number 16, David Jiříček, 89 overall on the top pair in Winnipeg. His new partner is Gregory Watson, an 81 overall two-way D with 93 shot blocking and stick checking. Alrighty. The defense in Winnipeg has gotten substantially weaker overall-wise, and the forward core as well has dropped off a little bit, especially in that bottom 6. The Jets are definitely going to have high hopes after finishing 7th in the NHL last season. Jiricek's coming off of his best season with the Jets so far out of the 2 that he's played. We're now into his 3rd and possibly his last with the Jets. That 93 passing, 92 defensive awareness, all those numbers tell me that it should be another good season from Jiricek, but it looks like this season will have him carrying the team a bit more than he's had to the last few years. Year number 16 was a very difficult season for the Jets as they finished 2nd last in the NHL, the worst finish of Jiricek's career. 27, 51, and 4 was their record. Jiricek played well and was 1 game shy of playing a full healthy season. 5 goals and 39 assists for 44 points through 81 games. He was a -9, 65 penalty minutes, and was logging over 25.5 minutes of ice time per night. After 3 years in Winnipeg, he has 1 first-round exit to show for it, a reverse sweep at that. He's still an 89 overall at the age of 34, though, which is very, very good to see. He should be in line for another decent payday for another, short-term, I'm looking at another 2-3-ish year contract. And of course, still chasing that elusive Stanley Cup. So let's see what kind of decisions are made in the 2038 offseason. Year number 17, and David Jiříček has returned to the Eastern Conference after 3 years in the West, signing a 1-year contract to play top pair D with the Capitals, paying him $12.915 million, a huge contract for the now 87 overall 34-year-old. Give me a quick moment here because this is quite the breakdown. You have Simon Nemec, who was in the real world draft ahead of him, but in this universe was drafted 2 picks after him in the 2022 draft. Simon Nemec and David Jiříček both on the same blue line. Jiricek's partner is Hudson Hilbert, an 82 overall offensive defenseman, so that's good to see. Trying to get some offense going. On the offense itself, you have Lucas Anthony, a 94 overall franchise sniper. This guy, 90 overall Turner, 88 overall Barney. It's a crazy top 6 in Washington, minus the second line wingers, but huge star power on that first line, good defense, the goaltending 83 overall, I'll take it. Looking forward to a decent bounce back season from Jiricek's team performances, as he's only made the postseason once in the last 3 seasons, but Jiricek himself should look poised for a 40+ point season with Hilbert, Nemec, some good support on the team. Still 5-star puck skills and shooting, but everything else starting to slowly regress a bit more. 92 defensive awareness still there. Should be a solid season for the 34-year-old here in 2038-39. In year number 17, David Jiříček and the Capitals finished 10th in the NHL, a solid season that saw them go 46, 32, and 4. David Jiříček had the best offensive output of his career, but his season was cut short, another 62-game season, as he missed 20 games to injury. 5 goals and 48 assists for 53 points through 62 games, which would have put him on a career-high pace of a 70-point season. He was a -2 through those 62 games, 86 penalty minutes, 14 power play points, and was averaging over 25.5 minutes of ice time per night. A great season from the now 35-year-old. In the postseason, it was more heartbreak for David Jiříček as he once again saw the Eastern Conference final but couldn't make it any further. The Capitals took down the Canadiens in 7, Lightning in 7, but fell to the eventual Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils in 5. Jiricek kept up that great regular season pace as he scored 2 goals and 14 assists for 16 points through 19 games, had a +6, a game-winning goal, and was logging over 26 minutes of ice time a night. This man is a horse, coming off of the best offensive season of his career. He's 35 years of age, back up now to an 88 overall after such a good season, 93 defensive awareness, 5-star shooting, 90 offensive awareness, but in need of another contract. Does he stay in Washington? What kind of deal comes his way in free agency? All I know is that this player is amazing, and I really want him to get that cup. But let's see what the 2039 offseason has in store. Year number 18, Jiricek's 15th season in the NHL, and as much as I would have loved for him to have stayed in Washington, he takes his talents to Las Vegas and signs a 1-year deal with the Vegas Golden Knights, paying him $9.395 million. At the age of 35, Jiricek is now an 86 overall, but still listed as a top 2 defenseman. Still the 4.5-star defense, puck skills, 5-star shooting, the skating, the physical, that's going down a little bit, but the attributes that matter the most still seem to be up there. Jiricek's defensive partner of the season is Tommy Nokalainen, an 80 overall offensive defenseman, 5-star puck skills. That's great. The team here in Vegas is all right. I have a pretty well-balanced top 6. Goaltending is an 87, backed up by an 85. All right. Jiricek now at the age of 35 is getting towards the end of his career here. He's had a lot of postseason experience, but still no Stanley Cup to show for it. So fingers crossed for 2039-40. Year number 18 was another top 10 finish for David Jiříček. He loves the postseason. Vegas finished 10th in the NHL with a record of 43, 31, and 8. David Jiříček was back to playing a full 82-game season, and in it, he scored 4 goals and 36 assists for 40 points. He was a -6, 60 penalty minutes, 9 power play points, and averaged over 25.25 minutes of ice time per night. Also, just wanted to note, shout out to the reincarnation of Mario Lemieux, who's here on Vegas. In the postseason, Vegas took down Vancouver in round number 1, but dropped in round number 2 to the Anaheim Ducks, who went on to lose the Stanley Cup in 7 to New Jersey. So another Stanley Cup run cut short for Jiricek. In the postseason, Jiricek played in all 10 games and had 1 goal and 3 assists for 4 points, not too shabby. He was a +1 and was logging close to 23.5 minutes of ice time per night. At the age of 36, he's still a horse out there in the year 2040, and he has now dropped to an 85 overall. He still has more to give, a very serviceable defenseman who blocks, hits, even fights fairly often. He is out of contract once again, so he will re-enter unrestricted free agency if he chooses not to retire. So we'll see, as always, what the offseason has in store. Year number 19, and David Jiříček remains in the Pacific Division, now playing with the LA Kings on another 1-year contract, this time paying him $7.025 million. Jiříček is now an 84 overall. I forgot to mention at the end of last season, he had top 4 D potential. He now has top 6 D potential and is listed as a top 4 defenseman. Puck skills, defense, and senses all down to 4 stars. Skating 3, physical 2.5, but shooting at 4.5. He can still snipe him out there with the very high offensive and defensive awarenesses as well. On the second defensive pair, he is playing with Edgar Stajan, Matthew Stajan's son perhaps, a 2-way defender, 25 years of age. Not the greatest blue line core here in LA. Forwards, tough, but there's Jaden Suter, a 90 overall playmaker. Yeah, and goaltending, it's Spencer Knight at the age of 39 with this generated prospect. So, I don't know if it's going to be necessarily a cup run for David Jiříček and the Kings, but he's making money to play hockey in a top 4 role. So let's see what happens here in 2040-41. Year number 19 was unsurprisingly not a very good season for the LA Kings, as they finished 5th last in the NHL, 28th place to be exact. They had a record of 34, 39, and 9. David Jiříček once again played in 81 out of 82 games, and in those games registered 8 goals and 16 assists for 24 points, a -22, a career worst I believe, on a not very good team, all while still logging at 22.5 minutes of ice time per night. He was still putting in those minutes. By the way, if you're curious about the fights, 9 fights this season for David Jiříček. I haven't been tracking it every year, I'll get to it in the recap, but this man fights a lot. At the end of year number 19, at the age of 37, David Jiříček is now down to an 80 overall. tough things to see. 3.5-star defense, 2.5-star physical, but pretty much all of his attributes getting a big downgrade here in 2040-41. Does he return for one more year on a second, third D pair role? What kind of money could he get? How's the market? After being on the worst team that he's ever been on in his career, can he bounce back to go off into the sunset, or does he call it a career after this season? Headed into 2041-42, year number 20. David Jiříček is back for one last ride. He found a gig playing top pair D in New Jersey. As a 79 overall, he signs a one-year deal, paying him $5.85 million. Not a bad deal at all. He's playing top pair D with Philippe Leclerc. He spent a couple years with him in Winnipeg a few years back. You got Sergei Brelin's reincarnation. You got Sergei Bobrovsky's reincarnation. Great to see on that blue line, but not the highest overalls. Offensively, New Jersey is not in a bad spot. Shane Wright is here, a fellow 2022 draftee. There's a few of those who already retired, so good to see Jiricek still out here. Goaltending, an 88 here, Tyler McAllister as a starter with an 84 backup. So New Jersey may be the team that David Jiříček returns to the postseason with, but can he still log those same minutes as a 37-year-old? 2-star physical, 3-star skating. He still has decent puck skills, shooting. He's not blocking as many shots as before, but he could still be a help for the Devils. And with him now having 7th D potential, this is very likely his final year in the NHL, so he will want to go out on top. In year number 20, it was heartbreak for Jiricek and the Devils as New Jersey finished 18th in the NHL with a record of 40-34-8. The Eastern Conference was especially strong as 8 of the top 12 teams were from the East, and Carolina nabbed the last spot with a 12th place finish. David Jiricek played in 72 out of 82 games and registered 6 goals and 19 assists for a 25-point season. Not too shabby. A -6, a couple game-winning goals, and he was still logging 24 minutes of ice time per night. How about those fights? I'm just curious. He had only one fight this season in his older age. Now down to a 78 overall, still at the same 7th D potential. Could he come back for one more with how there's like 75 overalls in many teams' lineups? Yes, but he is now 38 years of age. The physical at 2 stars, the skating at 3 stars, only 80 acceleration. He still has a lot of talent, but after a very long career, he may consider calling it here in the 2042 offseason. Year number 21, his 18th in the NHL, and David Jiříček has signed another one-year contract. This one really has to be the last one. He's now a 77 overall, still with exact 7th D potential. He signed a one-year, $2.755 million contract with the San Jose Sharks back in the Pacific Division. Now, when it comes to the starting lineup in San Jose, the blue line is actually pretty packed, 91, 88, and then, of course, it's not great with all these 70s, but the team seems to be putting these 77s and 78s over Jiricek, who's a 77, but he should get some time in the lineup, hopefully sometime this season, and not just stay as a real 7th defenseman. So David Jiříček going to have a reduced role this season, 3-star defense, puck skills, senses, 2.5 skating, 2-star physical, but still a great shot at 4-star shooting. So I'm not sure how much ice time he'll get, but this time I'm really locking it in that this has to be David Jiricek's final season before retirement. And after missing the postseason back-to-back years, he won't want to go out on a three-peat. Thankfully, in year number 21, David Jiříček had another top 10 finish as the Sharks finished 8th best in the NHL with a record of 47, 30, and 5. For a 7th defenseman, Jiricek ended up seeing some decent games as he played in 56 out of 82 and registered 6 goals and 13 assists for 19 points, which would have put him on pace for 28 points, which is more than he scored the last couple seasons. He was a +1, 21 penalty minutes. The last couple of seasons have been career lows in that regard as well. 4 power play points, 3 goals of his were game winners. He averaged 14.40 per night, which was by far a career low, understandably. And he also took 3 face-offs this year, the first 3 of his career, and he won one of them. So shout out to David Jiříček, 33.3% on the draw in his career now. Career lows for hits and blocks, stuff like that, understandably once again. And he also threw in 3 fights. He still got it. In the postseason, the Sharks swept through Vegas in round number 1, but lost in round number 2 in 6 games, once again to the eventual Stanley Cup champions, this time it being the Oilers as they took down the Leafs in 7 for the 2043 Cup. David Jiříček did get to play in all 10 games, which was great, and he registered 2 assists in them. He was a -1 and was averaging more than the regular season ice time, 14.44 per night. And even in the postseason, he still had a fight. I wish we could see these stats at the end of their career, not just season by season. It's crazy how much he fought. But now at the end of his 21st year, he's still 77 overall at the age of 39. I don't think the attributes changed too much over the course of this season. It was a solid year in San Jose. He saw the postseason once again, but is he ready to call it a career in the 2043 offseason? And in the 2043 offseason, David Jiříček does indeed call it a career at the age of 39, having played 1,343 games, scoring 142 goals, 514 assists, and 656 points. So let's start breaking this all down, the career of David Jiříček. He starts in Columbus, had some RFA troubles, goes to Philadelphia, then to Winnipeg 3 years, and then jumps around one team per season between years 17 and 21. Let's look at the seasons that he had along the way. He only played a handful of full 82-game seasons. I wouldn't say he was like injury prone because he had a lot of 81, 80, 79 game seasons, but he did also have a good number of 50, 60 game seasons as well. So injuries did plague him a little bit in his career. 142 goals. He never scored more than 16. That was a solid season. He was usually good for around, that 10-ish range. Assists, he scored as high as 49 and was usually good for that, high 30s range as well. And for point scoring, his best was a 64-point season. Had 2 seasons in the 60s, 2 in the 50s, a small handful there in the 40s, 4 in the 40s, and definitely showed his offensive capabilities. His lowest was 15 points in 70 games, which was his second season. His rookie season was 16 points. Aside from that, he usually got at least into the 20s. His plus-minus ends as a plus 145. He had great plus-minus seasons. Plus 39, plus 32, plus 24. He had a couple rough ones of negative 22, negative 15, but usually a very good plus player. He ends with over 1,000 penalty minutes as well, with 1,032. A lot of those coming from fights, actually. It's unfortunate that you can't see fights in career totals. I don't know why. I didn't realize it until like year 8 or 9 or something. But this man was averaging between 6 and 9 fights per season. So for the sake of averages, let's just say it's 7.5 fights per year times whatever. Let's just say 17 years because you have the RFA, whatever. He probably fought at least 120 times, 120, 125 times. So let's say it's 125 fight times 5 minutes. That's 625 minutes of penalty minutes right there. So he only had probably about 400 of minor or double minor penalties. He took 2,433 shots, shooting at 5.8%. He had 21 out of 142 of his goals being game winners. 26 power play goals, 101 power play points, also 8 shorthanded goals, shout out to him as that, and 29 shorthanded points. More shorthanded points than I would say the average defenseman gets. Very, very good. He was logging an average of 24.5 minutes of ice time per night, 24.35 for his career. Went as high as 27.01 when he led the league in 2028-29, usually in that 25-26 range. Even at his career lows, because he only had that one full season of 14-40. So, he was always at least in the 20s. Yeah, got to give it to him there. He played over 33,000 minutes of ice time. Won that one face-off when he took 3 of them in that final year with the Sharks. He was 33.3% on the dot. He ended up hitting 1,893 times. He was usually, he went as high as 154 hits in 2032-33 and was always throwing more than 100. Aside from his last few seasons, couple years in the AHL, his final years and years that were cut short due to injury, obviously, but in full seasons, he was always easily getting over 100. Blocked shots as well, 1,760, his best being 142, usually in that 90 to 100 range, I believe. Yeah, very impressive stuff. More than a block and a hit per game throughout his career. We'll see that in the career recap screen in a moment. He had 1,084 giveaways to 497 takeaways. Not sure if that's really great in the real world, but in EA land, that's pretty much par for the course. A very good defenseman will have the giveaway to takeaway ratio at about 2-to-1, and that's what I'm seeing right here. 1,084 to 497, not a big deal. Now checking out his postseason stats, because David Jiříček saw a lot of postseason action, especially in the earlier half of his career. He played 142 postseason games. A lot of those were not the deepest of runs either. Those 142 games can be broken down between 12 different playoff berths. He never went further than 22 games played twice, as he made 2 Stanley Cup finals in years 4 2006. But when the Blue Jackets made the Cup final and won the Cup in year number 5, he was an RFA and did not get the Stanley Cup ring. That's probably the saddest part of this entire career simulation. His best postseason points-wise was 16 points in 19 games. He had a really good offensive year there with the Capitals, but he ends with 15 goals and 54 assists for 69 points through 142 games, a plus 18, 92 penalty minutes, 263 shots, shooting at 5.3%. 7 of his 15 goals in the postseason were game winners, so he really knew when a goal was needed to be scored. He had 7 power play points, 2 shorthanded goals, 4 shorthanded points. That's very interesting. He was logging 24.50 on average in the postseason, as high as over 28.5. That 24.50 comes from some of the, I guess some of, that 14.44 with the Sharks and a few 23s there, but he was usually 25, 26 plus. 3,526 minutes of ice time, no faceoffs taken here. He threw 241 hits, as many as 51 in that Stanley Cup run there with the Blue Jackets in 2028, the Cup final run that is. Blocked 200 shots as well, 105 giveaways to 60 takeaways, so even a better ratio of the giveaways to takeaways in the postseason. And thus concludes the career of David Jiříček, ladies and gentlemen. A very interesting one where he's drafted in 2022, has 2 great years in Cleveland, comes to Columbus, plays 2 years, sees a Stanley Cup final, is left off of the roster as an RFA. Columbus wins the Cup. He comes back, sees the Cup final again, but still cannot capture it. Spends another couple years in Columbus, goes to Philadelphia for 5 years, where he has probably his best seasons, Winnipeg for 3 years, and Washington, Vegas, LA, New Jersey, and San Jose to end off his career, chasing that elusive Cup, but never making it further than the second round in his final 5 seasons. In his first 9 years, so his first 6 seasons in the NHL, he saw 4 Metropolitan Division championships, 2 Stanley Cup finals, but never quite got back that level ever again. A lot of postseason time, a lot of personal success, which included a President's Trophy in his final year in Philadelphia, but never further than an Eastern Conference final with Washington. Another great season in his career, all the way down in year number 17, but that was just about it. You can see his average ice times a bit lower with Columbus because of his earlier years. At the end, he was doing 26, 27. With Philadelphia, he averaged the most at over 26 minutes of ice time per night. Winnipeg was still putting up a lot, close to 26. Then the rest of his career, 25, 22, 24, and then his lowest year with San Jose to give him a career average of just over 24.5. Over an 82-game average, he was around 40, 41 points, something like that. He would average about 63 penalty minutes per season, 116 hits, and 108 blocks per 82 games. A very solid defenseman through and through, and very similar numbers to the Simon Nemec career simulation if you saw his. Nemec played a bit longer, made a bit more money, therefore scored a bit more points, had less playoff time, but did win a Stanley Cup. Very similar 82-game averages, but different careers. So all that to say, David Jiříček, he's poised to have a great career, which will begin in Columbus. How realistic will this simulation be to what actually happens? I hope not, because especially if Columbus, shout out to Columbus for making 3 consecutive Stanley Cup finals. But Jiricek not winning that cup in 2027, that was brutal. I usually end off the simulation by showing that player's place in the all-time numbers, but Jiricek wasn't really someone who's going to be like top 100 all-time for any of these goals, assists, anything like that. But I will say that his 142 postseason games would put him around the 120s all-time, tying him with Patrick Sharp, Brad Stewart, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and putting him in very good company, as that's a leaderboard you can climb very quickly. 142 games, putting him in the 120s might not sound very high, but the all-time leader in postseason games is 266. Give him another 12 games with another second round exit somewhere in there, and he'd be within like the top 70 all time. So it does change quite quickly. But all that to say, a very good postseason career, saw a lot of minutes in the playoffs, just couldn't capture that cup. Some deeper runs, some shorter runs, but it was a fun ride here in the simulation. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, as well as dropping a comment with your thoughts on the simulation, your favorite part, the most heartbreaking part, what part could actually come true even. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do, because NHL 23 is around the corner. Career simulations, franchise mode, and much, much more, including breaking news and analysis in the real world of hockey. So if you enjoyed this, take a second, check out the channel, and I'm sure you'd love everything else that we're doing. If you haven't already joined us, we'd love to have you over in our Discord server as well, where we're talking franchise mode, hockey, and everything in between. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch this, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned, it is a big labor of love, but it is a fun result to see. This may be our final simulation of NHL 22, I'm not sure. But as always, be sure to leave your suggestions for the next simulation, whether it be for NHL 22 or NHL 23, as that is coming very, very soon. A big thank you to all of you for taking the time to enjoy it. Be sure to check out the rest of our simulations in the playlist on the end screen right now with some of the other big names from the 2022 draft. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the next one.